I believe that being a great storyteller is a real superpower. And in turn, I think that a presentation is simply a story told at work. And in my experience, people who are good at presentations are going somewhere in their careers. But I have a problem. I am not a natural storyteller. My natural stories usually fall flat because I don't have the gift. I'm good at logical thinking. I'm not very good at creating an emotional story. But I'm also an engineer, so whenever there's a missing skill, I build prosthetics to replace my missing skills. That's how Obsidian-Excalidraw came to be. I don't have my natural drawing skills. My motor skills are not very good. I created an environment that helps me think visually. And so today, I want to share a gift with you. I want to share one of the tools that I created for myself. And this tool is for designing stories. And so this is built on the South Park storytelling secret, which I learned from Terry Parker and Matt Stone, who are the creators of South Park. And essentially what they explain is a story where the story beats are connected with and. This happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. Those stories are super boring. But if the story is connected with but, therefore, however, because, this happened, but this happened, however, that happened because this happened, etc., those stories are super interesting. Now, this is good food for thought, but I'm also a visual person, so I was looking for a way how I can visualize this best practice for designing stories. And that's where I came up with this approach where I use different type of arrows to connect the story. And don't get hung up by the words under each of these. Look at the logic of this approach. I have 5 different connectors. I have the additive connector. That's the and, also, then, furthermore, etc. These are the boring connectors. I also have the causal connectors, which are interesting because they drive the story forward. These are the because and thus, as a result of, etc. And then I have a couple of turning points. The pivot, like but, yet, still, etc. I have the reversals, the however, nevertheless, conversely. And I have the loops, ironically, paradoxically, ultimately, etc. And so the way this works is, if we look at, for example, the story that I've been telling you so far, we started with storytelling being a superpower, which in turn means that presentations are stories at work, but I have a problem with my boring stories, which, as a result of which, I develop tools to help me counter my gaps. And I'm sharing with you today this as a present. So this is the present, and then what is the way to visualize it? So that's where we come to. But let me take you through a more practical example of how this framework works. The paradox of focus is a story I developed based on Indistractable by Nir Eyal. And this is something that we worked on in cohort 15 of the visual thinking workshop. Already looking at the shape of the story, you can feel that probably this is not a bad story. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be the best story in your life, but for sure what you're going to see is there are twists and turns. But let's look at this story a bit closer, and I'm just going to read it for you so you can experience the story. So the paradox of focus begins with a simple misunderstanding. We relentlessly chase pleasure to calm our restless minds, yet studies suggest that what we often call motivation is really an attempt to escape discomfort. And as it turns out, many distractions are not chosen because they are meaningful, but simply because they are nearby. Our instinct is usually to fight these urges with more discipline, but that often creates a cycle of frustration and shame. The harder we push against ourselves, the heavier the distraction seems to become. On the other hand, research shows that self-compassion is often more effective than strictness, not lowering standards, but responding to ourselves with less judgment and more awareness. Still, there's another layer to the paradox. You cannot truly be distracted unless you first define what traction is. Most distractions are harmless if planned for the right time. However, that requires us to guard our time carefully, as Seneca warned. Ultimately, focus is not about controlling every outcome. We only control our inputs, our choices, our environment, and the systems we build around ourselves. And perhaps the most potent thing we can do is label ourselves as indistractable. The stories we repeat about ourselves quietly shape the behavior that follows. So how did you like that story? I mean, this is not, as I said in the beginning, not the greatest story on the globe, but I think this is a decent story. Now, what you see here is the same story, but extended with a couple of elements. The yellow post-its here are chapter summaries or chapter summaries from the book. So I know which chapter talks to that topic. And the illustrations are illustrations I created to support those parts of the story. In some cases, they're just a single icon. And then finally, I just want to tease you a bit. So you will notice that there are some additional elements here. So you saw the turns and you can see the yet and but and however, and you can see how the story tiles build up into a story. But you will also notice these clips here, as well as you will notice these little icons here. Those are additional tools that I have built. And indeed, those who are member of the Sketch Your Mind community, I'm going to be posting an article here in Members Lounge after this video goes live, and I'm going to share about those icons in the bottom corner so you get an understanding. I'm not going to share it here in the video. As well as regarding those clips at the top of each of those cards, that is something that we will cover in the visual thinking workshop. In fact, I just want to show you that this card, the storytelling secret, is just one of the 40 some cards within the entire self-paced course that comes with the visual thinking workshop. And in turn, the visual thinking workshop takes you through 5 sessions, 5 live sessions focused on different aspects of a complete PKM workflow. Session 3 is where we build the storyboard, including the path that we looked at right now, but also including the icons in the corner and the clips in the top. So that's something that we do live in lesson 3 or session 3. The illustrations I showed you, those are things that we learn and practice in session 2. Then you can see here that or actually if you're watching my videos, you know that every single card and image here is a connection to another idea and has additional metadata on the what I call the back of the card. So think of these images as postcards that have a front with an image and the back with text. We are not going to any detail right now, but that's what we talk in session 4. And the presentation I'm doing right now, that's what we do in session 5, how you can make this into a live slideshow like this one here. So just to remind you, Cohort 16 is coming up from 16th May until 28th June. So in roughly 1 week time. Now is the best time to join. If you join, then you also get 1 year free of the Sketch Your Mind membership, and all the links and everything else is below in the description for this video. So I hope you found this useful. I think this storytelling secret and this way to visualize the story is a very powerful approach. I like to do this with all the presentations I create because it helps me understand, am I going to be super boring, or is this, at least, does this have the roots or the possibility to become a good story? I can still ruin it with the way I present it, but at least at the core of it, it is a good story. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the Visual Thinking Workshop cohort, as well as in the Sketch Your Mind community. Thank you.